DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. And this is a network management protocol used to automate the process of assigning IP addresses and other information that you need, like default gateway, DNS, and all that other stuff. So without DHCP, we would have to actually go in and manually configure everything on the network, which is time consuming, and we can slip up and have errors, right? Errors in maybe setting up two of the same the IP address on different end devices, which can cause IP conflicts, or just typing something wrong. We can fat finger something. Okay, so we really need DHCP to help us with automation, to help us preventing with those errors like IP conflicts, and really just centralize our IP management so we can just have a single point where our IPs are being allocated. Now, how DHCP works is through a method called DORA. All right, so if these are messages that's sent between the DHCP client and the DHCP server. So the DHCP client connects to the network via the Ethernet cable and says, hey, I need an IP address. DHCP server, where are you? Can I get an IP address? This is the DHCP discover message. So the server receives this discover message, and then it sends the DHCP client an offer message to say, oh, okay, here's something for you, an IP address, here's a DNS, do you want this? And then the client receives that message, that offer, and sends a request and says, hey, I like the package that you're giving. You know, can I have it? Can you put my name as the owner of this package? And then once the server receives that request, that they are cool and good with the contract, then the DHCP server sends the client an acknowledgement to say, okay, we're going to sign this package to you. Here's your lease time. Here's all of this. Good to go. Now go ahead and get on the internet. All right. And that's kind of the exchange that happens for the DHCP client, which is your computer or end device, to get an IP address from the network. All right. Now, some key components I want to point out with DHCP is IP address pool, which is the range of IP addresses the DHCP server can assign to the host devices. Lease duration, which is the time period for which the IP address is leased to the client. Now, once this lease expires, the client must request a new one, go through the DORA process again. Default gateway. This is the router's IP that enables the device to communicate outside of the local network, right? Away outside of your LAN. And DNS server. This is the IP address of the DNS server that allows us to resolve domain names to IPs and IPs the domain. So instead of us saying, hey, I'm going to go to 8.8.8.8, we can remember, hey, I want to go to google.com, right? Or just names instead of numbers. Now, in a smaller environment, we would have DHCP configured on the router itself. But in a larger environment, we have a dedicated server that is for DHCP only, that allocates it on our network. Because we want our router to do only what routers do, route traffic. We do not want it to allocate IP addresses and do firewalls and all this stuff. We just want our routers to do what it's made for, just route. But we're in a small environment, a small network, and this router costs a lot, and we want to get the most of it. We want to utilize all its features. So we would configure the router to have to be the DHCP server. Excuse me. All right. Another thing I want to point out is DHCP relay. So if a DHCP server isn't on the same network segment as the clients, a DHCP relay forwards DHCP messages between the clients and the servers. There's a command. The command is IP helper-address, and then it's the DHCP server IP address. Again, this is to help relay messages between the client and the server so the client can get the IP address and talk on its own. All right. So let's go ahead and get through some configurations. Let's go get some hands-on on this DHCP. So we're going to set up our lab as such. All right. So we have our router, we have our switch, we have two PCs, and they're connected. Now, the first thing we got to do is go into our router because we want to configure DHCP. And that's the first thing we're going to do is configure the router to be a DHCP server. Okay, so let's come over here. We can cover this up a little bit. We're going to say no. And before let's get out of here. What is this? This is G0/0/0. Got it. Ooh, got it. So let's go back into our router. And what do we want to do? We want to go into enable mode. Let me pull this up a little bit to see if you guys can see this a little better. Okay, there we go. You should be able to see that much better. I am covering up our topology, but it's okay. So we're in the enable mode, and we can go into configuration mode. Now, as we are doing these things, as far as setting up these different type of protocols, it's good to play around and harden your router, such as creating a host name. So you can do host name, and we can call this, let's call it Texas, because that's where I'm at right now. So we call it Texas. Okay, and our router's called Texas, whatever. It's something that you must do as far as hardening, as far as making it customizable to your environment. Another thing I want to pull out, if we haven't already, is IP domain lookup. This is so because I am not Aquila in the B. I do not know how to spell that well. So I'm always mistyping something and hurrying up and executing by pressing enter. And then it takes so long for it to not look up and say that this is not the right command. So to help me out, I put IP domain lookup. Excuse me. I should have put no IP domain lookup. Okay, so that means that do not look up mistyped configurations. That's all that is. Okay, so let's go in. The next thing we must do is actually open up our router to routing and talking with the next device in line, which is the switch, so it can talk to our computer. What do we have to do? We have to say no shut to our interface and add an IP address to it. So let's go ahead and put in interface. Again, you can put out interface G0/0/0. It's a gigabit. Enter. We're going to put an IP address of, and we're going to use what the lab is telling us to use, 192.168.1.1. Always add a subnet mask. Remember, 255.255.255.0 because it's a /24. We're using class classless subnetting, not classless, classes, right? Class full. Sorry, I'm speaking on my words. Class full instead of classless. Class full means that this 192.168 is going to equal in what? A /24, a class C. So we got that, and we say no shut down. Make sure you spell right. Okay, so now everything is up, our interface is up, and we can exit out of that interface. Interfaces, let me move this. You see how our interface is up? Let's just speed up time. We're good to go. All right, let's go back into our router. What do we want to do on our router? Set up DHCP for the 100th time. So we're going to do IP DHCP. Let me move this so you guys can see. IP DHCP pool. We have to give it a name. Let's give it lab network because we're just labbing it. All right, so we gave it the name. We're in the DHCP configuration terminal. So we're configuring DHCP. This is the terminal we're in. So we're going to do network. This is our network, okay? And the pool, again, is our full network. So we're going to do .1.0, okay? And then give it a subnet mask, because that's the full network. And then make sure we put our default, spell it right, default router, okay? Hold on, let me pull it up here. Default router. And our default router is the IP address. So it's just saying this is the default gateway, okay? So 192.168.1.1. All right, network defines the IP range, and our default router defines our gateway. All right, this is the way out of the network. enter. Another parameter we can give it to give out to our host is DNS. We don't have that set up, but just so you can see what it looks like, it's DNS server. And we can put 8.8.8, all right, something very simple. What we also can do is say IP DHCP excluded address. We can say this, excluded address, and you can copy and paste commands. I think it's best so you don't like mess up, but it's also good to learn as you keep typing these over and over again. So you can say excluded address is this, which is the router's IP address it uses for gateway. All right. So we have our DHCP, we configured it. Now what we can do is a show command. So we can end, get out of here, or you can say do, so do, show IP DHCP pool. And let's look at here. We got pool, lab network, okay? As you can see, nothing's been leased out yet, but we have it set up. We have it set up good. Again, this do command is saying do this. I'm forcing it to do the show command. Because if I don't say do, then I'll have to exit out. Look at this. Look at show IP DHCP pool. You see it says invalid. But I would have to literally exit out of the command terminal, the configuration terminal, run that back. Run it back to IP show IP DHCP, and then it'll show it. Sometimes I get lazy and I don't want to back fully out, so I just do the do command. Regardless, we got that thing up and running, okay? So now we can exit out. We speed up time a little bit. Everything's green, everything's go. Let's hop onto PC 0. IP configuration, make sure it's DHCP. It's gonna take a little minute. Now we see, oh, DHCP gave it. We got our default gateway, which is the router IP. We got our server, subnet mask, all that. Let's come into PC 1. Let's do the same thing. Desktop IP configuration, DHCP, and give it a few moments. And boom, we got the next available in line. So I can add up to 254 hosts. Remember we did our subnetting. What's the usable IP host range? So we can add a whole bunch of devices for DHCP to allocate, as you can see. All right. You can also come into the router really quick and do a show IP DHCP bindings. Now that we binded everything together, binding. And as you can see right here, we have our bindings .2 and .3, which binded to these MAC address, and it was automatic. All right, so that lets you know that, hey, DHCP is working. Let's run the command. Let's run the show pool command back. And as you can see here, 2 was leased out. Right here, leased 2. Okay, so that's really all to it. If you want to troubleshoot, you would want to troubleshoot with some commands like show IP DHCP conflict or server events or server messages. There's a bunch of commands. Like I said, I'll put it in the article. So just make sure you're reading that PDF to get a full understanding if this was, if you still don't understand it after this. Play around the lab, make sure you fully understand what DHCP does, the benefits of it, and how you can set it up and troubleshoot it. And then you're good to go. Moving on to the next section.